In today's video, we'll talk about two very well-known array methods and its sort of less known functionalities. The first one is called push. What do you know? I'm pretty sure everybody on this world that has ever used JavaScript has at least heard about this array method. What does it do? Very simple. It pushes elements to the array. So here we have an array, right? And the code to print it on the screen. So if I run the program here, we're just going to get the array on the screen. So if we use the push method on this array, so if say push and push an element, whatever we want. For example, we can push the element 0 onto it. And if we now run this, you'll notice 0 got added at the end of the array, right? So that makes sense. A really cool feature about this push array method is that you can add as many parameters as you want. So if you want to push 3 elements onto this array, you can do it. Just kind of enumerate them using a comma. For example, here I can say string and let's say 17, for example. And if I try to run this, you'll notice I get all 3 in the order I actually added them. Now this feature works really nicely with destructuring. So if you don't know what destructuring is, you can check out a video up top that I have talked about how it works. But basically what it is treating an array as a set of parameters. So here, let's say we have another array. Let's say we have array 2, and that array has our elements in here. And you might remember that I have made a video on the concat array method, and that might be desirable to use here. You can check it up top if you want. But let's say you don't want a new array, right? Concat will create a new array for you and will not change our initial array. But let's say we actually want our initial array changed. How can we do that? Well, simply using push and destructuring is very simple. What you have to do is just say array2, and not just array2, because that's going to add the array itself as an element onto our array. So we're going to get nested arrays. We're going to have to destructure this array using the triple dots here. And now if I run this, you notice the difference. We get the elements inside the array, not the array itself as an element. Nice. So I think this is a nice feature to know about because it's very readable. The code here is very readable. You're basically pushing the second array and you're destructuring it, right? With other solutions, maybe a for loop would be a much more readable solution, but that would require more lines of code. And then there's splice, which kind of is more difficult to work with. So this is probably, I think, the most readable one and kind of the smallest one. Now here's a feature of the push array method that I'm sure most of you don't know about it. And I think it's really cool and can come in useful sometimes. The push array method returns something. And would you guess what that something is? That something, let's store it in the res here and just kind of console log it. Let's just change this. And that something is actually our length, the length of our new array. So after pushing something onto that array, and if you want to actually check that array, you can just as easily take the result from that push and use it as such, which can lead to some really quick operations. For example, if you want something to happen if the array goes beyond a certain number of elements. So after you push an element, for example, I can say here if array.push of, I don't know, let's say test2 is higher than 100, then you're going to do something. And that kind of condenses your code a little bit so that you don't have both push and then length, albeit it's a little bit less readable. So it has its trade-offs. So since the push array method is very simple and straightforward, aside from this a bit obscure functionality with the length, we're going to cover a second array method that goes hand in hand with this push method, and that's the pop array method. I'm sure you've used it from time to time where you had to actually remove an element from the list. Let's see how this works. So here we have, let's remove all this, right? And we have just the initial array, right? We're just going to print our array and that's it. So let's say you wanted to take the last element of the array and also remove it from the list. How would you go about that? Well, there's a simple way to do it, right? Just kind of take our element, so say element, and say array.length -1, right? So that's going to get it. So we're gonna have it inside lm, and I'm just gonna print it here. If I run this, you'll notice I get -23 as our last element over here. So that's this one. But we also want to remove it. So to remove it, there are some strange ways you can do it. I prefer using the delete operator, even though that doesn't truly remove it. But you can do just delete of this thing. And then if we try to run this, you'll notice I get the last element as being a simple empty item, right? There's nothing there, that's basically undefined. So that's a way of doing it. But there's a function, or there's an array method that actually does it for you. And that array method is called pop. So you can simply use pop by just saying array.pop, right? And if we, let's actually remove all this. If we just say that and print out the array, you'll notice that the last element is gone, completely gone, and even the length is now smaller, right? So we only have 3 elements, not 4 with 1 empty element. But where did it go? How can we actually get it? Well, guess what? The pop method also returns the element that it removes, which is, well, our -23, right? So we can say here, let lm equals that, and then print it on the screen. And now if I run this, you'll notice I get -23 as our result. So as you can see, this kind of goes hand in hand with push, as push adds to the array and then pop kind of takes it out, right? If you need to do that. And you can use pop to kind of consume an array and kind of get all its elements. So you can use here a while loop that says if lm is strictly different than undefined, in the specifications of the pop array method, if there's nothing inside the array, we're going to get undefined. So that's why I'm checking if it's not undefined. So if it's not undefined, that means that we still have elements and we've got an element already. So I'm just going to print it on the screen, right? I'm going to say just lm here, and then I'm just going to say again lm equals array.pop. And now if I run this, you'll notice, let me clear the screen. You'll notice I get every single element from the end of the array to the beginning, right? So that, I hope that makes sense. That's a way to kind of consume the array. Now the array is absolutely empty. We have nothing in it, right? That might be a way of signaling something that you can maybe add to the array later on, or a lot of nifty things can be done with this sort of algorithm. And that's about it with the push and pop array methods. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you learned something new today. And if you have any questions, do leave them down in the comments below or on our Discord server. Well, see you guys next time and take care. Bye.